Right. Thank you very much, Nick, again for meeting with us for the newsletter. We're going to talk about psychology behind the refereeing, officiating. So my first question is, how do you prepare yourself psychologically before a match?
Well, most important thing is to keep a consistent routine. So for me, I do a little bit of watching of game film just to kind of prepare myself for what I might see from teams, and it's not digging too much into teams' pasts and stuff like that, but just being able to see, especially as an assistant referee, which players am I going to be dealing with up top, from the speed to the style of play. So I do make sure to watch some film. I also do perception tests. So Pro and US Soccer both have AR perception tests that you can take, and I use those just to stay mentally sharp. But to be honest with you, I don't necessarily do that just before games. I just do it during the regular season to make sure that I'm mentally prepared. And then when I get to the stadium, the biggest thing is just there's always a point where you've got to be able to shut off the outside world, turn off your phone, and just be ready to focus for the match. And I think that's a key thing for a lot of people, because too often we get distracted by other things when we really should be just getting ready for a match. And if you can block out those things and just really focus on what you need to do for your game, that it goes a long way.
Well, I think that blocking those external factors is a very relevant thing, even for the local level, where you may not have a video of a team, but I think that's a very relevant thing. Last year, you had your debut MLS game. The big game for you. Did you prepare yourself differently than usual, or was it pretty similar?
I felt it was very similar, and I purposely kept it that way. And it was thanks to advice from a number of MLS officials, including Jason White, who I called the morning of the game, and the discussion was, Nick, don't change anything from your pregame routine. Continue to do everything that you've been doing. And honestly, the biggest thing is you can't treat it any different than your other games, because then you put pressure that's not needed on yourself. You start thinking about things that are not normal to whatever your routine is. And whatever your routine is and what you've been doing mentally to get yourself to that point has obviously been working. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the position that you are in the field there. So keeping the consistent approach, and for me, a perception test, and same type of thing with eating a meal a certain time before the game. And when I got to the locker room, turning off my phone and just making sure I was mentally fit and ready, and block anything out that was going on in my personal life or whatever else that might have been, went out the door, and it was time to focus on the match. So it was basically the same as it would have been for a USL game, a lower level USSF game, adult game, college game, you name it. It's all the same for me.
Would you suggest the same thing for local referees? For example, somebody who's been doing a lot of local games and then suddenly gets their first State Cup match, or suddenly getting a State Cup final match. Do you think just doing, and I mean, basically believing in what you have done and then prepping as normal, would you say that's a good piece of advice?
Absolutely. And I think too, it's difficult because human nature for us is when we get a big assignment or something like that, naturally there's an adrenaline rush and you're all pumped up, and it's going to happen. It happens to all of us. But the ability to kind of calm that rush, because sometimes that rush can also lead to anxiety and being nervous. And then what that'll do is that then sometimes taints our judgment while we're in the game, and it makes us, sometimes have poor decisions and lose focus. And so to be able to have the mindset of just to continue what you've been doing that's made you successful, I mean, that you're already a step ahead if you're doing those things and those processes.
So there's a lot of preparation you do before the game, but once the game happens, inevitably we make a mistake. Sometimes that mistake is very obvious to everyone, even to yourself, or sometimes players are complaining, you have a sense that you might have made a mistake. But when you make a mistake, what do you do so that you won't make more mistakes?
The biggest thing, it's sometimes tough to do this because of the fast pace of the game that we're in, is to take a moment, take a deep breath, and just give your mind a quick time to reset and refocus. You can't let it dwell in your mind, and if you do, it'll affect your performance. And so for me, biggest thing is next stoppage of play in the game, where if there's a call that was contentious or I think I got wrong or something like that, it's take a quick deep breath and just reset your mind mentally, because ultimately we're no different than the players, than the coaches. We're all going to make mistakes throughout the course of the game. The coach might make a wrong decision in a substitution. A player might make a wrong decision with a turnover or a pass or a poor trap. We're human nature as well. So we're all ultimately going to make a mistake. And we can't be afraid to make mistakes because, number one, that's how we learn. And number two, we're not perfect and there's no perfect playbook to officiating a game. So if we can accept that, a mistake can be made. And if we can quickly put it behind us and take a moment to refocus, it goes a long way in really helping us perform and not make those mistakes again.
Mm. And then another challenge, I think, especially at the local level, is when a game is so one-sided. And let's say you're an assistant referee, and then great majority of the game is happening on the other side of the field. And how do you stay focused in that situation? Do you have any advice?
So for those of us referees that have been around long enough, we've always used the phrase, anything can happen at any moment. And the one thing that I always tell myself is some of the craziest moments, me personally, that I've had in games have happened in very lopsided games. And it's expect the unexpected. So for me, what I always tell myself is the scoreline might not be indicative of a competitive game, but the thing is that doesn't mean that something can't happen. And so my job as an official is to be fair to the game. And if I'm not ready for anything that can happen at any given moment, I'm really not doing my job as an official to be ready for it. So I know that there are plenty of times where, especially as an assistant referee, if you're just stuck at midfield. But the thing is you've got to be ready, because in a moment the ball can be down in your end and you've got a goal line decision that you've got to make that might be critical, and it might be a critical match incident that you've got to be ready for, that might ultimately affect the outcome of your performance in terms of scoring and metrics. So it's constantly reminding yourself that it might not seem like much is going on, but it can happen. And there's plenty of times where it won't happen, like something crazy doesn't happen, but it's those moments where we kind of let our guard down that bad things can happen. So it's always being alert and prepared for that, those times.
And that one moment can change the outcome of the match, for example. Yeah, thank you, Nick. And then we're going to do this again. And good luck for your 2021 season.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.